Hair loss seems to be on the rise, and this is not just an opinion. This is now based on the data, which I'm going to show you. But I've covered this previously, and I want to encourage you to take a look at this presentation about immune privilege and hair loss. Now, what I spoke about in that presentation, and the link is in the description, was mainly about the fact that there are certain parts of the body that are what we call immune privileged. And that means that they are protected by the body. They're kind of like, and the description here is like a bank vault. You are not allowed in there. It has a vault door, and this is how you keep the gold safe inside the bank. Now, if there was any damage to that bank vault, then this is where the body can then start to target itself. And what then happens is it's kind of like an autoimmune response where the body no longer recognizes itself as being itself. And so it can target it. Now, that's more like autoimmunity, but immune privilege is a little bit different. And when we think about what the immune privilege means, there are a number of areas of the body that have different genetic makeup that the body doesn't attack. And this is an example here. We're talking about things like the certain parts of the inner ear, joint spaces, testes, the placenta, certain parts of the eye. What happens is that there are some immune cells around, regulatory cells, that say to the immune system, don't go near. Don't worry, they are protected. You don't need to touch them. They're kind of like they have diplomatic immunity. And so the question is the hair follicles specifically have a similar kind of diplomatic immunity. And this is what I wanted to share with you and encourage you, if you're interested, to take a look at that presentation, which is in the is that the hair follicles, they maintain immune privilege through these regulatory cells and certain cytokines that they produce that tells the immune system to stay away. And this is how the body manages. And so, as I said, if you have a situation, and this is what a hair follicle looks like, and you can see here, this is the hair. This would be the skin here. There's a gland that produces the oily base sebum that keeps the hair oiled. There's a muscle in some that can keep the hair erect. And then this is the shaft. And then down here is the bulb, and also where the hair grows from and gives it the color. And this is the setup for what a hair bulb and hair shaft looks like. And it has a degree of immune privilege. And this is what it would look like when we talk about the immune privilege. Here is an example of a regulatory cell. These would sit around the bulb and the shaft, and they would tell the surrounding immune cells to stay back. And this is how it protects the hair follicle, because the hair is not, it has a genetic, well, I shouldn't say a protein makeup that would normally the immune system would attack. And the only way to keep it safe is to protect it by saying it's got diplomatic immunity. If this is damaged, then you will have more damage to the hair follicle and therefore associated hair loss. And this is what we call alopecia. Now, some people may say, well, is there any evidence that this is happening? So, as I said before, I have the ability nowadays to study 186 million data points. And so for almost any topic these days that I have a question about, I can then produce very detailed data to look at trajectories since 2016 in the UK. And this is publicly available data. I just know how to analyze it. When you look at this here, looking at the loss of immune privilege, This then looks at 8 different compartments, including neurology, placenta, the eye, the inner ear, hair follicle, skin, testes. The strongest are with the neurological and the placental. Hair follicle has moderate increase, but not as strong as these two. So what this is indicating is that across the board, every part of the body that has immune privilege, maybe except the testes, seems to be under attack. And this could be quite significant. And when we look at the hair follicle characteristics, so this is again from the data, and this whole chart will be in the course. So if you want to see it, you can look. So this is starting from 2016, and you can see there was a decrease here with regards to non-scarring hair loss coming down to 2020, and then suddenly you can see the trajectory change for all 3 of these, all to do with hair loss. The only one, if you look at vitiligo, this is a skin condition, autoimmune. This remained stable, tiny peak hair, came back down, remained stable. So this characteristic with regards to immune privilege seems to be affecting certainly the hair follicles. And this is what would cause that situation that we have with regards to hair loss. Just a reminder in case you've just come. This here is what a hair follicle would look like. It would be surrounded by these regulatory cells producing cytokines. These cells would tell the rest of the immune system the hair shaft and follicle has diplomatic immunity. Don't touch it. And this is how it prevents the immune system from attacking it. And this is what is going on. There are a number of cells that are involved, and again, you'll see this in the course. But essentially, these regulatory cells, they produce some cytokines, interleukin 10, TGF beta, and these suppress the surrounding immune cells and prevent them from targeting the hair follicle. But what seems to be happening is that those regulatory cells themselves have lost their ability to function effectively. And then what you end up with is a situation where now the immune cells are able to get in to the hair follicle, start to do it damage, and then you get hair loss. And this redness here represents the inflammation because no longer is diplomatic immunity here. And if this happens to enough parts of the hair, you then have patchy hair loss that would look something like this. This is alopecia areata. And it can be quite sudden, quite dramatic in terms of the patchy hair loss. And this is one of the conditions, as I said, that seems to be on the increase. So this is real stuff. This is not just an opinion. When we look at the data from coming up to 2025, there is a clear trajectory for all forms of hair loss. And as we can see here, 20% rise, and it's an accelerating rise for alopecia areata. Again, another form of scarring alopecia here, a 43% rise. Non-scarring hair loss, a 12% rise. You can see that all of these conditions are rising. And when you look at it compared, so everywhere here that you see green represents increasing conditions. And this is all the way through the body, multiple sclerosis, maternal hypertension. This is a big topic that I want to look at in detail soon. Around the eye, optic neuritis, all of these conditions are rising, including cataracts. All of these things are going up and are connected to immune privilege. And how we know it's not just the fact that they're being coded more is that there are other conditions that are going down. Diseases of the inner ear, male infertility seems to be going down, problems with the joints and joint pain seems to be going down. So this indicates that the data is picking up real signals with regards to what is happening and that principle of immune privilege. So just quickly, in summary, so that you understand these points, and again, I encourage you to take a look at the course. What happens is that there are certain parts of the body that have immune privilege. The inner ear, parts of the eye, testes, placenta, joints, and they have diplomatic immunity from the immune cells because of these regulatory cells producing cytokines. What then happens is that you also have a hair follicle for which many of the proteins in this trigger the immune system. So this needs to have a degree of diplomatic immunity, and this is what it would look like. The regulatory cells surrounding the follicle telling all the immune system cells, stay back, don't attack this hair shaft. However, if you have damage to these regulatory cells and they're no longer as effective as happened throughout the pandemic related to spike protein, which we'll not get into at the moment, you can then have inflammation around this, which then causes the hair to be lost. And this is then what would cause a condition like alopecia areata. And in terms of what that means, as I said before, this now means that we are seeing a rise in diseases similar to hair follicle diseases like alopecia areata. All of these are rising since 2020. As I said, there is no way to get away from the data. What people will argue about is why. But that's a big step, because so far, many people have tried to ignore these questions, saying there is no problem. Well, I'm saying the data tells us there is a problem. There is something going on. These days, I no longer just speak about the elephant in the room. I say that is it time to switch on the light so that you can check if there's an elephant in the room. Let's not assume it's the elephant, but we have to ask that it needs to be investigated. Whichever way we take it, multiple conditions rising concurrently all across immune privilege suggests that there is some degree of damage to the immune system. You can blame it on COVID, but is that the only part of the problem? And science is not normally afraid of asking hard questions. And if we don't understand these mechanisms, it will only come back to haunt us in the future. So, final point, remember, autoimmune immune privilege. I think this is a valuable piece of information. Look in the description on it, and you will also get this whole dashboard to look at in your own time. And I'm sure I'll have a short ebook to give you some ideas about what the full presentation was. So thank you all very much for listening, and we'll look out for bringing you more information in the near future.